Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today's session. And thank you for continuing this learning journey with us. And today is the day 5, and where we focus on the estimations, budget, and the pricing. And we have Kunal and Shreya sharing all the insights with us today. So, as you already know, we have completed 4 sessions earlier. They're all recorded and uploaded on the YouTube channel. And this session, along with the next 2 or 3 sessions, are going to be uploaded as well. So, initially, we started it as a 7-day series. Depending on the feedback received and the topics that can be covered, we are planning to add one more session at the end of the series. We'll keep you posted on that. If you already are, you will automatically receive the notifications whenever the event is published, or whenever you will also get the reminders whenever the event is coming up. So if you're not already part of the group, please join the group so you will get all the information. And Kunal, you can take it over from here. Please do the slideshow.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Kunal. And Kunal has been active in the series from the very beginning, and he has been adding all his insights. And today, Kunal and Shreya are going to share all the useful information. Thanks, Kunal.
Perfect. Thanks, JP. So I think today, we discussed with respect to, in terms of, we started with respect to what is the sales process, what is pre-sales, in terms of, then we understood the overall lead generation process as well as the qualification. Day 3, we did understand with respect to like a overview with respect to discovery and requirement gathering and what needs to be done to handle the overall discovery call. And then with respect to, we moved to with respect to presenting the POV and POC, and in terms of a detailed session around what POC, what POV mean, and how do you structure that with respect to, in terms of overall presenting that to your prospects, to your leads that are there. Today, we move to the next stage where we've given the POC, POV, and now we reach to a stage where the prospect is keen on knowing the pricing. He or she is, they are keen on knowing in terms of the next stages or in terms of purchase. So, once we reach this stage, uh, typically from a sales process, it's where you are covered about 7 out of 10. Then it's where it remains with respect to 3 out of 10 to crack that deal, crack that prospect, or get that customer in terms of as a project per se or as a client per se. So today we'll look through in terms of how do you go about and understanding what is estimations, what is budgets, and how do you go about pricing, and how does a negotiation typically happen. Uh, Overall, so today what all we cover is with respect to in terms of the estimation challenge. So what is estimation? How do you go about doing the estimation? What are the different methodologies that you have in terms of doing the estimation? How does the Salesforce ecosystem work with respect to budgeting and pricing? We'll also have a look at it from an entire client perspective that is there, because typically what happens is Salesforce sells the license, so there is a license pricing that is there for a particular end customer, as well as there is a service cost, which either, in some cases, maybe say Salesforce may be doing the implementation, but in most of the cases, it's the partner ecosystem where partners, in the call, partners like us may be doing the implementation and the setup for the customer that is there. So how does that pricing work? How do you go about selecting the right model that is there? And what are the drivers that go in with respect to in terms of costing? We'll also have touch base on in terms of how does the pricing work. So we had a look at in terms of the decision making model that is there in the previous sessions. So today, how does the decision making fall in when it comes to the pricing discussions, and certain risk that we need to be careful about? And also, we were going to cover with respect to an implementation checklist that is there, which we needed to maintain with respect to what all is that you need to see. So that's also something that Shreya will cover in terms of overall. along with the overall estimation and the pricing that is there. So, what is an estimation challenge that is there? Uh, in terms of overall, the estimation challenge is so any customer. So, I mean, let's take a simple example. If I just break it down, I mean, whenever we go to buy or purchase anything, I mean, there is a certain budget that is there. There is a certain pricing that is there that we expect or we want to pay, and then it's where say whatever we are looking to buy, does that product fall into that particular purchase budget, or does it fall or nearby to whatever budget we have. So basically balancing that with respect to overall is where and making bringing that into a budget is with respect to an important part of the estimation, where you know you so from a Salesforce perspective or from a product perspective, it's where you try to meet the client expectations as well, but at the same time, uh, you don't incur a loss, or you are not underpricing it. So it becomes a very important step in terms of balancing that. And to balance that, there are certain three primary risks that come in. I mean, with respect to where you identify the scope correctly, you note down the scope correctly, because if there is a scope creep, I mean, say if you've given an X amount, but because of the scope creep, you will spend or you will have X plus Y effort. So then it becomes a scenario where you incur losses because you've not budgeted for that, estimated for that. Secondly, with respect to in terms of say fixed price projects, so we saw the different project methodologies in terms of how do you price your projects. So if you have like a fixed price project, it becomes a scenario if you've not done the discovery correctly, or if you've not identified a certain risk or a certain complexities. It might be where the fixed price project might just go on and on and on, and you may just spend your resources, spend your efforts, spend your pricing in that, costing in that, but you are not going to get paid for it, because I mean, for the customer you've given a fixed price that is there. So that also becomes an important step in terms of balancing, as well as with respect to like a overall relationship damage. Now this is broadly, and uh, in fact now, I mean, we will be joining all the sessions that are there. So all the previous sessions will now come to a like a complete cycle where we'll join all of that in this particular session and the coming session. So I mean, I will take references from the past sessions as well. I mean, in terms of overall, there will be some references that I'll pick up. So relationship damage, I mean, this is also something that is there where, say, if we have given a fixed pricing and to a particular customer. So we saw the aspects where, as a salesman, as a salesperson, relationship becomes very important. Building that trust with the particular customer or prospect becomes very important. So that's where the relationship damage also can come in if your estimations are not done right. Because say if you say that, okay, I am going to charge $100 for this particular service that is there, but at the end you send the customer with respect to say a charge out or a bill of say $200 that is there. So then it becomes where the customer is feels that lack of trust, lack of visibility, that how come the bill is double, how come I have received a double bill, so on and so forth. So balancing all of that, I mean, during your estimations becomes very important in terms of when you are doing your estimations for the projects that are there. So there are a couple of methodologies that in terms of creating your estimations or when giving your estimations that are there. There are typical four methodologies that are there. One is with respect to the analogous. So this is mainly with respect to referring to historical data. So say where you look back to your last CRM implementation, your last Service Cloud implementation, or your last Marketing Cloud implementation. You see, try to map the scope, saying that okay, the scope is similar. For the previous project, we took 400 hours. This was the X cost. So therefore, for this particular project, or means this, it will be like similar. So it was the same cost that is there. So it's mainly where you refer to the historical data that is there. This is also typically used. I mean, it's not that it is not used. This is also typically used where you estimate based on past projects that is there. Uh, then you come to the parametric. This is more of where you use historical data as well, but at the same time, uh, you use the metrics in terms of where, uh, so you calculate or you put a calculation to it saying that, okay, in the, so you don't use a direct mapping of the project, but you use sub parts of the project. So say, for example, the CRM user setup or the Service Cloud user setup took X hours, and this was the cost that we had given. The flow setup took Y hours. This was the cost that we had given. The dialer integration took Z hours, and this was the cost that was there. So you use each part of it to derive a costing for your particular prospect or for your particular project. So it's a combination of historical data as well as using formulas to calculate and derive a pricing, and basically arrive at a pricing that is there. This is typically good where, as said, for standardized tasks. So for similar tasks or for a certain standardized task, which work in the similar way for all projects or all products or all engagements that are there. But this doesn't come useful for, say, customization. This doesn't come useful for new tasks or different tasks that you need to carry out for a particular prospect or for a particular customer that you're onboarding. So this is more of where, for whatever that you've done in the past, for standardization and for standardized tasks, definitely something that you can use with respect to the parametric approach. The most commonly one used is the bottom up. This is with respect to where you break down your project or break down any project that is there into like a overall task, a work breakdown structure. So you break down that entire project into smaller parts, smaller chunks. So as we saw, so the user setup, the flow setup, the dialer integration, the integration with, say, maybe the website, the integration with respect to the ERP. So you break down all of that into sub buckets, smaller parts. You estimate each of them in terms of how many hours you will spend, what all resources will be involved, how many resources you will require, what is the timeline the customer is looking at. All of those aspects, you arrive at a calculation with respect to each part. Basis that, you arrive at a total pricing in terms of your entire project, and basically then arrive at the final pricing that is there. This is typically, I mean, in most of the projects for Salesforce specifically, where I'm sure most of the partners, most of the implementers, most of the developers use this, because this is something where, since you are breaking down each task, you're breaking down each aspect of your project into smaller parts, you arrive at the best estimate that is there with respect to this particular approach, because you are taking into consideration each and every aspect that is there. Then there is also like a 3-point approach. This is typically with respect to where, it's a combination where you take 3 scenarios in terms of a most optimistic scenario, like a complete negative scenario that everything will go wrong in the project and you will have to have double effort, or the most likely or the most favorable scenarios. And then you arrive at like an average of that and arrive at the pricing. uh, Again, this is used but not common. I mean, this was all of the other methods apart from the bottom up are typically historical methods, uh, not commonly used, but definitely, I mean, they are there in the overall ecosystem that is there. But as a method, it's the bottom up approach that is typically used. Now, how does the Salesforce budget work, or how does the overall ecosystem work? I said the Salesforce ecosystem for any platform we take, in terms of, let that be your CRM, let that be your Service Cloud, let that be your Marketing Cloud, let that be your Loyalty Cloud, Personalization, Data Cloud, whatever may be the platform in terms of Salesforce. It typically works in terms of the pricing model, where there are 3 components to a typical pricing that is there. One is with respect to the licensing or the OPEX. So this is with respect to where depending on the license that is provisioned based on the discovery carried out, based on the client prospect requirements that we identified in the discovery stages, the particular license identified or the number of users identified for a sales cloud or a CRM, depending on that, Salesforce will position a license, position a pricing for a particular license. So that will be a license pricing that is there. Is typically directly paid to Salesforce. So Salesforce invoices the customer or the prospect directly, and basically the cost is paid to Salesforce directly. This pricing is typically given out by the Salesforce account executive or the sales rep, who typically works out the pricing depending on the various criteria that is there and the best fit of the product that is there, and he gives the license price that is there. The second is the capex or the implementation cost that is there. This is where, say, the partners or the team who is going to implement the solution for, say, the customer or the prospect, this is the partner cost. This is purely based on effort typically. So you break down your project, you identify the efforts that are there, identify what all, I mean, how many hours you will spend or how many weeks you will spend in terms of delivering the project, how many resources will come in, the identify the individual resource cost, and then basis that you arrive at a typical pricing that is there. And in terms of identify the various factors, risks, so on and so forth, and come at a particular pricing or the capex that is there. Third, and the other part that comes in, it's this becomes a variable. So typically in any project, the first and the second are definitely a part of it, unless and until the customer has the capabilities of implementing the solution and they say that okay, they don't want a partner or they will do it in house, then the capex doesn't come in. But typically licensing plus implementation cost is something that comes in for a particular client or a prospect as the budget that he has to spend for implementing Salesforce. Third is with respect to a variable factor, so where the client opts for support post implementation or like a managed services post implementation that is there. So this is where, say, all your campaign management comes in, or your change management in, say, the CRM flow or the Service Cloud flow comes in, or say maybe designing some loyalty, you know, say programs on your loyalty cloud. And I am using, like, I'm trying to cover multiple platforms just so that I can bring a perspective in and people can relate to it. Because I mean, from the folks, there might be many who only work on marketing cloud or who work on maybe sales service but not on marketing. So I'm trying to bring an angle to it from all the angles. So basically, that's where the support and the growth part comes in. It works in the form of a retainer, where the customer opts for your services to support them, to help them with respect to post implementation integration as well. This is more of a variable thing. So certain customers may opt for it, certain may not opt for it. So this particular cost is like a variable, thing which comes in not in all projects, but depending on prospect to customer that you onboard. But these are the typical three things that come in with respect to the Salesforce ecosystem when it comes to the estimation and the pricing that is there. Then, what are the licensing strategies that are there? So in terms of the overall licensing strategies, as said, I mean, if you see on the right, I've tried to cover the various aspects of the platform that are there. So in terms of maybe, so when it comes to core, you have your sales cloud, service cloud, revenue cloud. I mean, they work on depending on the number of users. Then you have your marketing cloud, which works on based on the number of contacts that you import into the system and the modules that you are using with respect to in marketing cloud. Then you have your Quip, Slack, again based on licenses, Heroku based on in terms of the number of integrations or the number of systems that you're going to integrate. I mean, in terms of Heroku and MuleSoft. Tableau is based on the number of analytics and the reports that you're going to generate. So these are the overall platforms of the entire Salesforce 360 that we talk about. And each of them has a different pricing model when it comes to in terms of overall with respect to how the pricing is carried out. Now, in terms of overall, so basically you have various additions that are there in terms of how the pricing is worked out. So which addition you are proposing in terms of to a particular prospect or your particular customer that is there. Say in terms of marketing cloud, it can be the professional edition, it can be the corporate edition, or it can be the enterprise edition. In terms of sales cloud also, so one is the number of licenses, but which licenses are you giving? So are you giving only the core license? Are you giving the core plus CRM? Are you giving like a core plus CRM plus Tableau? So I mean there are multiple combinations that are there. So in terms of which edition matters, which clouds you are proposing, that matters. uh, which depend the clouds that matter also come in with respect to the use cases. So say, is it like a marketing cloud plus data cloud, or is it like a marketing cloud plus CRM, or is it like a CRM plus marketing cloud plus data cloud opportunity that is there? So you need to identify in terms of what solutions will work for a particular customer, and basis which arrive at in terms of which licenses will work. And also with respect to certain times, identify what are the hidden costs that are there. Now in terms of the hidden cost, it can be, say for example, there is a, so means for CRM or service, the dialers that are there, typically dialers are external service providers. So basically the dialer cost gets added, so you need to identify that if you want to integrate the dialer or not. Say for example, you are taking anything from App Exchange via Salesforce, or you are, say, along with your CRM, you want a Tableau license as well, because analytics is a very important part. So it will become where Tableau is an add-on that is there, because CRM also gives you analytics reporting, but you want a specific type of reporting which you feel, or which Salesforce as a solution feels that will be available via Tableau itself. So that becomes an add-on capability as well. So you need to identify, saying that okay, what are the add-ons that you are procuring, and basis which arrive at in terms of a pricing, and it will help the Salesforce team also to arrive at a pricing in terms of pricing for a customer will be when it comes to the licensing that is there. Then moving to, I mean, this is typically a resource rate. This is across, I mean, this changes one from region to region, depending on the team size, depending on definitely with respect to in terms of how you provide your pricing, the customers that you are targeting. So this will vary, but this is just an average rate card when it comes to a typical Salesforce team that is there. You have your technical architect, you have your solution architect, I mean, who are mainly providing you with the solutions. Then you have your developer, that can be a Salesforce developer, who are your coders or your marketing cloud campaign managers or your loyalty program creators. So, I mean, any of those or they can be your, say, for example, if we look at marketing cloud intelligence, or earlier, which was called as Datorama, report dashboard creators. So those are your developers that are there. Then you have your project manager and BAs, who are mainly with respect to responsible for driving the project, client communications, your documentation process, and your QAs and testers. So this is the typical rate card that is there, which you follow, basis which you then arrive at a pricing for in terms of overall when it comes to customers. Again, I mean, this is I have purely taken one region, but this varies region to region. In India or offshore, I mean, the rate cards definitely vary, and there are a lot of components that go in when you are designing your rate card also. But this is just an average rate card when it comes to the resources that you typically provide for your Salesforce projects, and derive a pricing when it comes to your implementation integrations that are there. Now, how do you select the right model? So this is again, I mean, this is more of a refresher of what we covered earlier as well. But in terms of the pricing, where say you have your fixed price model, uh, a fixed price will be where you say have a proper scope. You don't have much surprises. That's when you can go for fixed price model. In that case, if you go for a fixed price model, definitely the risk becomes high for the partner, because say, or the implementer, because they are not able to justify any additional cost that is there, and it becomes a difficulty. Advantage for the client is that he knows what budget they are going to spend. So basically they can then utilize their other budget that is there into whatever other spending that they want to do, and they have a visibility there. So fixed price typically is favorable for the client, but not for the developers or not for the partners that is there. I mean, not that it doesn't work, it definitely works in terms of how you go about doing your estimations. But yes, there is a risk involved when it comes to the fixed price model that is there. Time and material, this is when, again, when you don't know with respect to what the exact requirements are, there are going to be surprises, so on and so forth. Typically for agile projects, agile requirements, you go for a time and material project. Risk is for both, because sometimes it may be where as a implementer you may spend more time and you may not get paid accordingly. So you will get paid, but you will not be able to make your profits or make your right margin that is there. Vis-a-vis for the client also, sometimes that becomes cumbersome because they are just paying depending on the effort spent, and they might pay out extra that is there in certain cases. So definitely in terms of there is a risk from both sides, but at the same time the pros that are there is it provides flexibility to both in terms of for the client also to discontinue from say any particular scope of work or any particular contract at any stage, partner or an implementer as well to charge out money depending on the actual effort spent, so on and so forth. And third is with respect to like a managed capacity. This is mainly with respect to where like in a retainer format. This is more of a retainer thing. This is a win-win for, I mean, both, because the client has visibility of what they're going to spend. The implementer is also not making losses because they know in terms of what scope they have, and it's a like comes in across month on month. So overall, the risk is low from both sides, from the client side as well as from the implementer or the partner side as well. But it becomes important in terms of which model you select, which estimation technique you select, and depending on that, you arrive at your pricing or estimates that are there. Now, what are the cost drivers there? I mean, so how do you arrive at a cost? I mean, so in terms of how do you arrive at a cost? So this is where it becomes important that during your discoveries, during your requirement gathering sessions, you identify and you work out a pricing model that is there. So you will identify the requirements, and post which is where you will come up with a pricing for the customer or prospect, saying that okay, we have one which is a low cost solution for you, where we do only the basic implementations, where we do the only the basic setup which will get you up and running in terms of usage of the platform that is there. We'll give you the standard reports only, but I mean, and that would be low cost, but it would be just the standard activities that we'll carry out. Vis-a-vis in terms of where you have your high cost projects or your customizations that are there, where you do multiple integrations, your multiple customizations that are there. You build custom objects. I mean, you use custom objects that are there in terms of CRM and Marketing Cloud. See, in terms of CRM or Service Cloud, sorry. In Marketing Cloud, it can be where you're doing complex integrations that are there, or you're building those complex journeys that are there. In data cloud, it may be where you are, instead of the three or four basic sources, you are connecting 5 or 6 systems to data cloud that is there. So all of those customizations incur a cost and leads to a higher cost that is there. So you can present, I mean, in terms of two approaches, and then work out during your estimation with respect to saying that okay, hey, means uh, when you're talking to a customer or client, it may be where you give them both the options and then allow them to choose whichever option that is there when it comes to selecting the project or selecting the solution that they want. Now, typically the risk that we spoke about, the hidden cost. Now, there are a lot of hidden things with respect to in terms of which you need to take care of when it comes to your estimations pricing. Uh, in terms of what are the integrations that are involved? Are there any additional integrations that are going to come in? Any other systems which the client or prospect is going to add? Or overall, what is the data that is there? Have you seen the data that is there? Is the data of good quality, or is the data in a really bad quality and requires a lot of cleanup and a lot of cleanup process that is there? Have you identified that particular process that is there? So you need to identify all of that in terms of when it comes to arriving at a pricing that is there. have a change management process. I mean, this becomes a very important thing. We'll cover this during the scope of work discussion as well, but a change management process is very important to have, where you have an understanding with your prospect or your client saying that what will be a change, what will be the definition of change, and what will the change management process will be. And uh, if you have a like a stringent defined process of change management, it gets easier to justify to the prospects and clients in terms of when it comes to asking for additional money or additional charges that are there, because otherwise without a stringent process it becomes very difficult to justify changes, and customers don't accept it, adopt it, and it leads to a conflict and so on and so forth. uh, is there storage? I mean, in case of Salesforce, normally storage doesn't come in terms of from the partner side. Typically, it's all over the cloud. But have you factored in terms of high amount of data when you are doing your marketing cloud sizing or your intelligence sizing? Because intelligence works purely on rows in terms of number of rows that you're going to use for your reporting, basis which you identify saying that okay, this is the cost that it is going to be there. So have you identified the correct number of rows? For data cloud, have you identified the correct amount of data that is there? What is the storage cost going to be? A very important thing. I mean, and again, this is not end to end. There are different platforms will have different hidden costs, but it's important to identify saying that okay, what are the hidden costs that are there? Present them to your prospects so that they are aware about it, and you don't reach a stage where, I mean, there is conflict or there's back and forth when it comes to disagreement and impacting your relationships that are there. And it also helps your prospect also to budget, because for them, if they know that okay, it's going to be where X cost now, but say there may be a minimal Y cost, say maybe in the future, but we have not been able to estimate that, that would keep them in a better space when they are talking to their finance team or their budgeting that they are doing. It becomes easier for them in terms of estimating and say guesstimating the projects that are there. So it's important that you identify all of the hidden costs as well when you are doing your estimations that are there. Discovery, this is just one aspect which I wanted to touch base on. So uh, sometimes it becomes important where you do a paid discovery that is there. So it happens where you do your requirement gathering sessions, your discovery sessions, you tell the customer saying that okay, you will do it for free, but you end up spending a lot of time, lot of effort in terms of building the user stories, writing the documents, the documentation, so on and so forth. And in all of that, what happens is where uh, you spend a lot of effort but you're not paid for it, and then the project doesn't come to you. So in a certain cases, it's important that you identify the discovery process, the effort that you're going to spend in the discovery process. There are various parameters to it in terms of how complex is your prospect, how many teams are involved, how many stakeholders are involved, how many solutions are they going for, and basis which identify that okay, it's better to go for a paid discovery than in terms of a free discovery that is there. But yes, this definitely helps you in terms of making out some money that is there as an implementer, as a developer, and you are not at a risk of a complete loss in terms of uh, you know say discovery that, or like a without a paid discovery. Secondly, in terms of a paid discovery, will help you as a security for your actual project, because if the client is going to pay for your discovery or requirement gathering sessions, it will be where all the right stakeholders will come in for those sessions. They will list out all the requirements that they want, and which will help you estimate the final budgeting for the implementation cost or the integration cost that is there. So that's where it becomes important that you do a paid discovery and then arrive at a accurate pricing for the setup or implementation that is there. This is just a sample budget in terms of our overall Sales Cloud implementation. I've just taken a mid-size Sales Cloud implementation, which involves like your discovery sessions, your overall configuration and setup, like a development with respect to your certain Apex code that you will write and certain customization that you will do, your data migration from your legacy system to this particular system, and mean Salesforce CRM that is there, overall testing and UAT, quality assurance, and training and development in terms of training the customer. Now, if you see here, what I've done is I've broken the project into typically each part, each aspects, or each phase, starting from discovery to requirement gathering to the overall configuration, the actual development, the data part, data migration, quality assurance and testing, and overall in terms of say the project management efforts as well, and the training that is there. And basis which I have arrived at a final price in terms of that this is the overall price that will come in when it comes to the overall costing that is there. This is just from an example perspective. You can use this, I mean, as a template. There are various templates that are there. Trailhead has various templates that are there, and there are platform wise templates as well with respect to Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Loyalty, Data Cloud, all having their individual templates as well, which you can use. I mean, overall, when it comes to arriving at a pricing and arriving at a budget that is there. Overall, in terms of the basis, this is typically with respect to what you need to keep in mind. One is with respect to definitely, say keep a buffer. So have a contingency buffer in terms of when you are doing your estimations. Uh, Arrive at a number which doesn't extrapolate the pricing as well, but at the same time it helps you cover the cost. So arrive at that right number. Each partner, each developer will have that right number. I mean, there is no right or wrong number. It completely depends on how you are driving your organizations, how you are driving your projects. So you will have to arrive at that number, but arrive at that number so that you have that contingency buffer with you so that you can cover cost. Be transparent. Transparency is very important in terms of various stages. So tell the client in terms of saying that, as we saw, the basic plain vanilla solution to the customized solution. I mean, show them that. Tell them in terms of even though if there is a change request, be transparent in terms of discussing the change request as well. It typically helps in terms of giving you those approvals and those right approvals that are there and avoids those back and forth. And typically have like a phased approach. So instead of doing like an overall project and scaring prospects and customers with respect to like bigger budgets or higher pricing, break it down into like a phase wise approach where say they start slow and then gradually increase the spend. So once they see value to your solutions, they will be ready to pay as well. So definitely try to break it down into smaller budgets and smaller chunks, and it gives them a flexibility of payments as well. So try to break it down into a phased approach, and then give the present the solution to them, implement the entire solution for them, which gives them an advantage, and they will be ready to pay as well. So yeah, these were some of the best practices that were there overall. I think one thing was with respect to in terms of a checklist. I mean, I'll request Shreya to take this up in terms of an overall checklist that you need to follow for your entire pre-sales activities before we deep dive into questions and take questions that are there.
Great. Thank you, Kunal. It's been a great session so far, and I hope the attendees are also feeling the same. So I'm Shreya Rashankar. I think, Kunal, we skipped the intro slide because this is the first time I'm presenting as such on this forum. So I'm Shreya Rashankar. I head our global pre-sales and solutions at Tech Mahindra. I'm a Golden Hoodie and a Dreamforce speaker and a marketing champion. And so glad to be connected to all of you. And thank you, JB, for this opportunity to be a part of this great series. So, from an overall perspective, right, I think last time when I had joined in, there was a very good question that if we could get some kind of insights around what exactly happens as part of pre-sales. And I know Kunal, Piyusha, JB, we all have tried to kind of cover a lot of these aspects from a theoretical perspective so far. But on the ground, the story is a little bit different, right? Because every organization or every customer is actually different. So now there are standard processes of managing any kind of customer requests which are coming in. How many of you, and again, JB, I'll take this opportunity to just ask a quick question. So, are you guys already aware of RFI, RFP, and RFQ? If so, I'll not go into the details. But if you want that, I think it's a good forum to discuss that as well. So I'm not seeing the answers right now. Sorry, let me just check. Okay. So I think it's a 50-50, I would say. Some people are aware, some are saying they're not. So I'll just give a quick idea about when a customer is trying to approach you as a service provider or a implementation partner. That is where there are ways and means through which the customer comes into you. Obviously, there are sales team who are sales team or client partners or the front facing people who are trying to talk to the customer on day in day out basis. If it is a new business account or if it's a brown field that they are trying to expand into. So if there are these kind of scenarios, the customer would probably come to you with a request around, I want to do this transformation, there is these 10 legacy systems I want to retire, or if there is a new OSS BSS system that I need to set up, or I need to have a modernization in terms of agentification, automations and all of that. So these are just some kind of requests that might come in, and those requests come in as part of your first stage. It could be RFI, which is just a request for information, right? Like it's a very initial stage. It's not a formal kind of a request where you might have to give any commercials or anything, but it is about just inquiring with a partner or a probable partner, right? Just inquiring around their existing capabilities. What do they deal into? If there are any kind of services, may it be the managed services, or be it be the development services that the customer wants to do, right? So all of these things are coming in as part of these different forms. One is, as we said, the very initial stage is the RFI stage. When there is a formal documentation which is coming from a customer around requiring ABC things, right? If there is, I want to make sure that there is this 2 years of transformations that you are doing with these capabilities, with these kind of end systems which are already available. Give us your approach. And I'm just talking in a very simple language right now, but generally the RFPs are as big as almost 50 to 60 pages, right? So these are the requests for proposals, and that is where you as a company or you as a pre-sales team need to really start working through the nitty-gritties of that RFP. It will start from your, I mean, generally, or and another good topic for us to discuss in details maybe, it will be the RFP structures, and that would give you a very good idea of how detailed a RFP could be. So basically this gives you a idea of what your customer is looking for and how do you approach that problem statement. The next one is RFQ, which is request for quote. So this is a stage where you as a implementation partner probably have made some kind of an impression, right? Where the customer could just tell you that, okay, I understand your capabilities, I know you are good at these areas. Can you just on a very high level try to give me a quote around these services? So this is where we talk about the RFQ part. And not every customer has their RFQs, but generally the customers who are kind of, you probably must be already dealing with them, or sometimes if it's a smaller kind of an engagement where it may not need too many to and fro's, there are not too many dependencies, it's not a very big budget, you could directly give a RFQ as well. So these are certain details around the initial part, how you start on taking up any kind of pre-sales activity, right? When it comes to you from a customer. Now, as a pre-sales person, what I generally do is, obviously I do not want to kind of lose a track of what kind of opportunities, what kind of proactive inquiries, or what kind of questions have been coming in from different customers globally. So what we generally do is we log it into our CRM systems. Obviously, I think Kunal in the second day or something, he had explained about logging a lead, right? So that is what we are talking about exactly. We need to ensure that all of these customers or all of these inquiries are logged and tracked to a closure. maybe it could be a win or a loss depending on how the situation was, how the system was, how the interactions went, or how satisfied was the customer, right? So all of these would happen. So second thing is, obviously you need to have an opportunity ID for any of your work that you're doing, right? uh, Along with the opportunity, obviously you need to have a TCV, ACV associated to it. So I assume you are aware of what a TCV would be. So it is actually the total contract value, right? So for example, if I'm taking up a program which is just Salesforce, then I exactly know that, okay, there are these three clouds that I want to deal with. I would assume, and I think Kunal spoke about the estimation methodology, right? I could assume that there is going to be around 20% of customization, 80% of out of the box, which is great. I mean, in the real life, it doesn't happen that way. But then you could, on a very high level, give all those values, right? And you would come to a number saying that if this is a Salesforce program for these many licenses. Again, I'll not go into the licenses right now because there is another model for that as well. But if this is my service as an implementation provider, I would want to quote this as a 2 million deal, for example, right? So that becomes my total contract value. Similarly, if there are kind of managed services programs, when I say managed services, these are more of a support program, right? Where you are brought in as a vendor, and there is already a Salesforce work which is ongoing. You might want to take over from an incumbent vendor, and you start looking into the operations, right? So that is the managed services part. That is where you actually could be doing like a 2-year contract or a 5-year contract or a 3-year contract. That is where we call it as a recurring contract, right? And that becomes like your uh, total contract value, and versus the annual contract value, which is like, if it's a just a transformation for 2 years, what is it that I'm going to get every year? So these are some of the details that you would want to ensure that you have with you when you are logging a lead or logging an opportunity into the system, and making sure that you're tracking it to a closure. Now, I think we spoke about when a new inquiry comes in. I was actually, I think earlier I referred in some of the session around a bid team, right? So generally in some bigger organizations, or if it's a very high value deal, like if you're dealing with something around 200 million deal, right, where there are so many systems involved, you would typically have a deal director who would ensure that your end to end stories are getting stitched. And when I say end to end, that means you might have a ERP system, you might have a CRM system, you might have marketing, you might have some downstream system, some ordering system, inventory, you might have networking systems, security systems, right? So the person who has to look after all of this and give the direction to ensure that this deal goes right is a deal director. Okay. The second thing, the person who ensures that the whole team works together on the related timelines for a RFP response is the bid manager. So generally, bid managers are involved right from as soon as the RFP comes in. They are responsible for ensuring that they have the right spokes from each of the service lines. When I say service lines, each of the capabilities. So if yours is a bigger organization with, suppose, SAP, ServiceNow, Salesforce, Siebel, then there is Amazon, the AWS teams, right? So depending on who all will be involved on that particular deal, the bid manager has to ensure all of them are coming now. And I think we are probably left with only 10 minutes. JB, do you want me to continue this one, or should we take it up?
We can continue, Shreya. We can
Okay.
extend it for a few minutes.
Sure, sure. Okay, thank you. So, with this team setup, now we spoke about the deal director, we spoke about the bid manager, then we do have a core deal team, right? Where you have the solution architects from each of your service lines or each of your competencies or capabilities. You could have a technical architect or representation from each of these teams. You could have your integration team members. You could have an enterprise architect who's working on stitching the end-to-end solution from each of these capabilities and service lines. So that becomes your core deal team. Once all of these people work together on creating a end-to-end solution, that is where the pricing part or the pricing approvals come in, right? So I think we did touch upon the resourcing or the pricing part. I think the one part that we have not spoken about so far is the RLS. So RLS is the resource loading sheet that we generally use to ensure that we know that, for this particular transformation, it is going to be a 2-year transformation with a team of maybe 50 people working on these capabilities, right? So that becomes the kind of loading that you need to do to come up with a commercial. So once you have the commercial for a deal, it's not that the organizations would approve whatever you want, right? So every service line head and every service line owner has to justify, and that happens again in bigger organizations. All of these things, some of these additional steps are mandatory in the bigger organizations and for the bigger deals, right? So we, like for example, we have a lot of these commercial reviews that keep on happening, and there are a lot of cross questions that happen, that why would you need this much of an investment. There could be areas where sometimes you might and I liked what Kunal was saying about the paid discovery, but there are situations where you might not be really paid for the discovery, right? So the customers are different. You might have certain areas where you are able to easily get some money for certain stages like transition, uh, but there are customers who might not be ready to pay upfront for a transition if you are if you're taking over from an incumbent vendor. So there are these kind of nitty-gritties around each of these things, and that is where the pricing teams play an important role. We need the approvals from the overall like, depending on, again, the way the deal is structured. If it is like a really multi-million deal, then in that case we need to ensure that the topmost level of approvals also happen on that. So all of this becomes a team, which is a big team that we call, who's working on this pre-sales activity. So if I now move to the other areas, once you get this requirement from the customer, you form a bid team, you track the opportunity CRM, what is the next thing that you need to do, right? So generally what happens is, if the RFP is a very small one, where the things are pretty clear, you might directly get an option to talk to the customer, right? To just understand, this is our understanding of your RFP, and this is how our approach might be, right? So this is just a very small kind of an opportunity. But there are bigger RFPs where you do not get a face time directly with the customer on the first go, and that is where you get an opportunity to ask them certain questions. And so the next step that comes in is sending those questionnaires for the RFP to your customer. Depending on their responses, you might want to have some kind of clarifications, you might have some assumptions around the whole RFP, right? So all of that comes as part of the responses from the questionnaire that you had sent to the customer. Now, once you get those responses, now this is the time that you showcase in your solution what are the kind of accelerators that you bring into the table, what are the kind of pre-made demos that you already have, what are the kind of solutions that you can offer, and what is the kind of efficiency gain, for example, or value realization that you can give towards the end of this uh, transformation per se, right? So these are the things that you need to be aware of as a pre-sales person or as a solutioning person. I'm using pre-sales and solutioning interchangeably. That's because that is what I have seen in my job, right? It is you are not just doing the commercial part, you are not just doing a high level portion of doing any jugglery with the numbers, right? You are actually doing the solutioning for the overall requirement that has come from the customer. So that is another thing. Then ultimately you come up with a solution document which will ensure all the requirements, be it from a commercial angle, be it from a governance layer angle, be it from the technical side, right? All of those details have to be covered as part of your solution document. We touched upon the RLS, I've already spoken about it. The commercials part also we spoke about. Ultimately, then once your overall story is approved, overall commercials are approved, that is where you go to the submission. Now, there are stages for submission as well. Sometimes what happens is you could just do a solution document submission, and you would be asked for a presentation, right? Where you do the defense presentation for your understanding, your solution, and making sure that the customer knows what your capabilities are. So that is one part of it. Sometimes the customers specifically call for some kind of demos where they would want to understand that what happens if we wanted to have these use cases ready for maybe a 30-day, 60-day, or a 90-day plan, right? So that's another angle to it, to your presentation, and the next level of getting through this particular deal. And then ultimately making sure that you are doing the right follow-up. So there could be multiple level of these to and fro's that happen with customer. The deals are not simple. They go even for like 6 months, 8 months, right? So totally depends on how small or how large a deal is, and how many levels of submissions have happened. Like for example, I'll just obviously I can't quote the name, but for one of the deals that we are working on, we are into the 8th submission right now. Okay, so so it's like when there are like lots of parties who are involved, lots of competition that is involved on some of your deals, there have to be multiple to and fro's. You have to come up with the right number, obviously in terms of commercial as well, which customer is expecting, or you might have to come up with the right number of efficiency gains that the customer is expecting. So I hope that that helps you to know the day in a life of what pre-sales does. And there are certain things that I would want to talk about in terms of levers for getting the right pricing, or what is a BAFO offer, and how you go about it. So I think those ones we can cover as part of the upcoming topics. So that's all from my side, JB and Kunal.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Riya and Kunal. This is an information-packed session. A lot of details covered in this session, and I think this is the main topic as well for a deal to progress further and strike it. Now we'll move on to the questions. In the meantime, Kunal, can you come up with a question for the certification voucher? So I'm looking at the chat for the questions. Let's go from the bottom. Shreya, can you share a sample of RLS format that is being followed in regard to Salesforce development?
Yeah, I think so. Probably I'll try to remove certain details and can share some template. But again, one thing to bear in mind that every organization would follow their own standards of RLS, right? Like for example, one thing that Kunal mentioned, you could get the standard templates directly for each of the clouds as well. But I, in my personal experience, haven't really used those so far in my journey, because every organization would have their own ways of coming up with how you want to define a particular role, what will be the seniority of that role, what location that role will be based out of. So I'll try to create some sample template for you to have a look at.
So we can share it in the upcoming sessions.
Sure.
The next question, what is the right resource mix in terms of talent at the RFP creation stage? And the resource or talent mix in general for the pre-sales teams?
Actually, a good question. Kunal, do you want to take it up and then I can probably add to it?
Sure. So I think in terms of again, different organizations function differently. Where say certain organizations will have a specific pre-sales team, which will comprise of. I mean, for the RFP response, you'll have like say a salesperson, you will have somebody from the execution side, because you will require somebody to tell you with respect to what all will go in the solution and effort. So basically an architect or a solution consultant who gives you those efforts that are there. And you will have like a project manager who will add those buffers, estimates, so on and so forth. So in terms of a right, I mean, I would say different organizations have different ways or different structures, but from a right pricing perspective, or to get the right pricing, I think it's one. So a two-member team can also do, but say I would say one is somebody who is technical and who can give you those effort numbers in terms of what goes in, and one who is who knows the project methodology frameworks and the methodologies, and who can add those buffer pricing, those additional pricings which will not come in from the tech side of it, and who can then arrive at a number saying that okay, this is the number that we need in terms of making profit from this particular deal or this particular project that is there. So yeah, typically two people, one tech and one who is like a functional resource. But again, different people, different teams, different organizations, different approaches. Shreya, you want to add to that?
I think you already added the technical and the business flavor. The one important thing that I also see is the skills to be able to confidently portray your capabilities to the customer. I think we also would need a person who can, pitch your ideas to the customer. So somebody who's techno functional, or somebody who's a good orator, can definitely help. But just talking wouldn't help, because you need to have the insights or the nitty gritties of what your solution is all about. So techno functional is the right mix, is what I'll say.
Wonderful. I think we have covered the questions in the chat. Kunal, can you please post the question for the certification voucher? And then we have few questions in the Q&A section as well. We can answer those questions after after this question. Please do it.
Sure. So I covered basically 4 estimation methodologies. Can you tell them with respect to which were the 4 estimation methodologies that were there?
The 4 estimation methodologies that Kunal discussed, please post the answers only in the chat section. I think we're getting the same answers because that's the same direct answer. The first one to answer is Neha Gupta.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Neha. Please share your email ID so we can coordinate on the next steps. And I have a few questions about the vouchers for the people who are attending the recordings, who are watching the recordings and sending the emails. For them as well, I'm replying and picking up the winner and replying to them directly. So you may not be able to know who the winner is because I've been doing it offline and then sending out the emails. But if you are the winner, you would definitely be intimated by the winner. And I'm going to share the link where all the recordings are being shared. And moving on to the Q&A section here, what is the why was in pricing implementation bracketed as capital expenditure? I may need more context to that, but Kunal, if you understand this question, please take it.
Why was in pricing implementation? So I think y'all are referring to, I mean, in terms of the implementation cost as a capital expenditure that is there. I mean, it was more to do with respect to that, as said. I mean, so implementation is something, unless the prospect or the customer decides to do it on their own, it is something that they will have to spend for, or they will have to get it done, and therefore it was uh, covered as a capex or a capital expenditure that they will have to do, because that's not something that they can shy away with unless and until they are going to implement it internally per se, which is one out of 100 scenarios that are there normally that we have seen, in terms of overall. Whereas in terms of the retainer or all of those are typically optional and not something that will be a part of overall an expenditure that is compulsory to do it with the platform.
Thank you. There is another question on the managed capacity model. Can you please throw more details on it? And is it the support which is given post go live, or which the partner can do itself or hire someone else?
Yes, so the managed support is typically your managed services post implementation. So post you've done your basic configuration or the actual configuration which the customer will require to use the platform. So managed services becomes all your add-ons that are there, which are not a part of the standard implementation that are there. So say for example, if I take Marketing Cloud, Marketing Cloud, to use Marketing Cloud, it's just important that you have your channels activated. Then, in terms of the journeys that you do are add-on. Say in terms of intelligence, Marketing Cloud Intelligence, a basic implementation would just be connecting your social channels and creating dashboards for the social channels. But say connecting your ERP and visualizing data from your ERP is an add-on that is there. So basically, it's whatever is not required for a customer to start using the platform, and an add-on or a managed services to handle the platform or use the platform can be your all your managed services or retainers that are there.
Thank you. The next question. The bid manager will have timelines. Is it like a project management in itself?
Ideally, yes. So again, the bid manager will have a timeline to follow, because say certain cases, certain times it becomes where the prospect is evaluating other platforms as well, and they would want the pricing to be submitted uh, at a specific timeline so that they can evaluate all the possible solutions, pricing, and they can reach a decision. So yes, it becomes like a small project in itself, where you get all your team along, get the responses to the RFI, RFP process, get the proposal going, derive the solution, pricing, and submit the proposal. So yes, it does become a small project in itself, and the bid manager then acts as a project manager as well to get everything out of the system, and with a proper timeline that is there.
And can you please share more details about the accelerators? I believe this has been covered in the day one. Anything that you wanna share more details, Kunal? Please feel free to add, or else Neha, I think it's your question. Please refer to the day one session for getting more details.
I'll just simplify it. I think so. In terms of just simplifying accelerators, so accelerators mainly are which differentiate you as partners or service providers. So mainly with respect to what differentiates you compared to another partner or your competitor that is there. So what added value you can provide as a solution. Let that be, say for example, as said, in terms of the CRM, you have to integrate dialers that are there. Now, what you can do is you can build four, integrations with say four premium dialers that are there. You keep them ready and you say, provide it as an accelerator to the customer. Or say for example, the Marketing Cloud in terms of a URL shortener, where they require a URL shortener for their SMS messages. So you build a URL shortener and that becomes an accelerator. So it's more of an added service which you can provide, which creates a value for as an organization, as a partner, compared to another partner that the particular customer is talking to or prospect is talking to.
That's a great answer. For fixed rate project, how can we handle with client if the delivery is not happening at the right time, and how are we going to tell that and convince the client?
So that's where your change management process comes in. An ideal change management process where you define that process at the start of the project, saying that, okay, I mean, how will you define your CRs? How will you define your overall, say, timeline discrepancy or say scope discrepancy? And then you use that as a, way to communicate it to the client, saying that, okay, although it was a fixed cost, but these are the reasons or these are the changes that have come in, and therefore the added cost or the added time, and therefore if it is an added time, you require added resources which are being deployed or put in, so we are asking you for an added cost. So that change management process becomes a very important step of how you define it, how you define the structure, how you uh, clearly talk to your prospect or customer during the onboarding stage, so that you can use that as a template or a leverage that is there.
Wonderful. The last question of the day, is there a sample questionnaire for an ongoing support project or a new project?
I think the questionnaire is more around the discovery part. I think that you all are referring to. I think in the discovery session, we did cover the basic aspects of what your questionnaire should look like. I think y'all can refer the recording. I mean, if it is over and above, I mean, that particular questionnaire, I mean, I think we can definitely pick that up in the next sessions coming up. And we'll try to cover that and share more details.
Yeah, I
That's
think the
good.
questionnaire, probably what I understand is maybe the question around what I presented as part of the checklist. So, if that is the question, then this is more specific to what RFPs come in, right? Like what kind of requirements come in from the customer, and you have to kind of create that as such for, like, if it's a telco like customer, you might have a specified predefined set of initial questions that you might ask, but then obviously every RFP you will have to fine tune certain questions to ensure that you get the right information to create a solution around it or to present a solution around it, right? So I would suggest, I mean, there may not be any like, I can give you an example. For example, if you are getting a question around a new service cloud implementation, right? So you might want to understand what will be the user base. That's a very basic question. So that you could put it as a part of your template. But then what are the nitty gritties? Are they going to have Slack integration, or are they planning to have any agentification included as part of it? So all of that would depend on the RFP that has come in. So I would suggest, I mean, won't be any specific template per se, but those will be the very basic like a user group, so what are the different user groups which are involved as part of this current ecosystem, or what are the kind of integrations that are happening. So these become your general questions then.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Kunal and Shreya, for a great session today. We have two more questions. If you're okay, we will take those questions, or else we can take in the next session.
Yeah, if the participants who asked the question are still there, we can answer them.
Okay. What are the main factors that influence how much you pay for a Salesforce Marketing Cloud?
Kunal, you want to pick it up?
What are the main factors that influence how much you pay for? Uh, as said, in terms of the channels that you want, journeys that you want, all of those aspects that are there. So means you'll have to evaluate in terms of what is the journeys, what are the integrations involved, what are the channels, and basis which, I mean, in terms of a number that is there, and you decide that, okay, this is the cost.
Thank you. And the last question, what steps would you take if a client pushes back on the price because they don't see the value in the Marketing Cloud's advanced features? I think this is more or less covered for a different answer, but I think the answer could be the same about the convincing, the negotiation, and so on.
It's more around convincing, and again, your client, relationship with respect to your prospect or client.
That's great. Thank you very much for staying long with us, Kunal, Shreya, and everyone for sticking around. And we hope to see you again in the next session. We have 2 more and hopefully 1 more getting added, 3 more sessions. And wish you all the good luck, and we hope to see you again in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.